Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
the
Good morning.
It's the 4th of February, 6 a.m. And we are here. Thank you for being here. Please let us know where you're watching from. I'm in Central Florida. Joe, where are you coming from today?
I am currently in Port Dover, Ontario, Canada. So I'm just outside of Toronto, just an hour south of Toronto.
All right. I had an echo going on there. Some technical difficulties this morning. Dr. Kiltz will be in shortly. And Alia won't be here today. She's traveling. So we'll see her later this week in Tampa and Sarasota. Like I said, thank you for being here. It's
Welcome.
36 degrees where I'm at right now. Please put your questions in the chat. We'll be having a conversation here with Joe in a second. And any questions you have, put QQQ in front of it, and we'll be able to then ask Joe
Awesome.
for a response on them.
Where in Florida did you say you were?
I'm in Central Florida, near about 45 minutes outside Orlando, towards Daytona Beach.
I lived in Florida for 23 years of my life. I went to university there, FSU. I was just there for 2 weeks visiting my dad. My dad's in Boca Raton, so Florida's my second home, and I'll eventually get back there.
Where did you live here in Florida?
I lived in Tallahassee when I went to Florida State, and then I also lived in Fort Lauderdale.
All righty.
And we're actually currently looking for houses in Kissimmee because we're gonna move to Florida for half the year.
All righty. So Kissimmee is about an hour from where I am, and I don't know what you're doing in Canada.
Well, I'm both American and Canadian, and I'll be 100% honest with you. I'm back in Canada because of my first ex-wife, but we'll just leave it at that.
All righty. So hashtag KMT for a chance to win a hat today. You still have time to come to Tampa, the meetup we're having in Tampa and in Sarasota Friday night at Dr. Kiltz's house. We'll be having some steaks, and Saturday in Tampa. All the information is in the description, wherever you're watching from, most likely. And if not, you can go to kiltzmeetup.com. And the first thing that you see there is the link to get to our meetup. So let's start with Joe having us learn about him. Tell us who you are, what you do, your carnivore story. We love stories of healing and metabolic improvement. Good morning, awesome. Dr. Kiltz.
Okay, maybe this will keep me, I don't know. Internet.
Yeah, some technical difficulty. It happens.
Yeah, it happens. Well, listen, one thing we know about technology, it always fails.
Yes.
That's one thing we should know by now, that we'll always have some bumps in the road utilizing it, because it's never perfect. It's never, especially when you need it or want it, right? Mm-hmm. But that's okay. And we usually work it out. So it's good.
All good. Absolutely.
All right, Joe, go ahead and talk to us about you.
Like I mentioned, we were talking a little earlier, I'm 57. I found Carnivore when I was 49. I wish I found it when I was 19 or 29.
Don't we all?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And just to give you guys a little context of my stories, like obviously I've been carnivore now, it's like 8 years, 7 months, coming up on 9 years. And prior to that, I've been in the fitness and nutrition industry for 30 years prior to that, right? Since I was 14 years old, I got my first 2 certifications in exercise and nutrition when I was 16. And I was a macro-based guy. Like, I was entrenched in it, right? For 30 plus years, I was doing macro-based coaching. So I still remember when my first 2 clients asked me about Carnivore, I actually told them, and I remember like yesterday, no, we can't do that crap. You need your carbs, proteins, and fats. You got to balance it out, right? And kind of dismissed it. And because they were my clients and they trusted me, didn't even ask 2 things, let it go. Not even 2 weeks later, I'm pretty sure it was Dr. Baker has a podcast on Carnivore. It goes kind of viral, and I have 39 people ask me. So that's kind of how I got started. You know, obviously, this is my business, how I make my living, pay my bills, support my family. When 40 people ask you, can I get a nutrition plan based on Carnivore? I'm like, okay. And the ironic thing too is I knew about Carnivore, but we didn't call it Carnivore. We called it the no carb diet, right? And we utilized aspects of a no carb diet for competition clients. We'd get them super lean a couple of months prior to a show and then incorporate carbs to fill them up on stage, right? So I was honest with people. I said, listen, I've never prescribed a nutrition plan I don't know 120% about, or I haven't done on my own. Let me do a little research, figure it out. Let me try it, and we'll go from there. And that's basically what I did. And that's how I got started. And, I can tell you almost a decade ago, doing research on Carnivore as a lifestyle was excruciating. There was very little, right? I ended up finding some groups on Facebook. I ended up finding 1 or 2 books. I dove in, did a month worth of research, figured out how I was going to do it. And I told my Carnivore queen, I call her Jamie, my partner in crime, my better half. I told her 22 days in doing Carnivore, I'm never going to eat a carb again in my life, right? Like, just the simple fact in that 22 days, what was transpiring just, in my body. And I tell people it changes you, right? It changes you physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. It's crazy, right? And, one of the big things for me that kind of was a little epiphany in that 22 days is that was the first time in my adult life that I wasn't hungry and I wasn't thinking of food, right? And I couldn't really grasp that. I didn't have an understanding of that, right? Because, I lived a classic bodybuilding lifestyle, where I would do a cut in the summer. A cut for me was around 3,800 calories, right? And I'd stay around 200 pounds, 210 pounds. And then for 8 months of the year, I would do a bulk, which is really just a nice term for saying, let's eat whatever we want and an indulgence and let's get fat, and I would eat around 6,000 calories, and I'd gain massive amounts of weight. But whether I was in a cut, whether I was in a bulk, I was always hungry, always craved. My appetite was crazy. I had a hard time staying on my plan. And that was one of the biggest things that, I tell people, when you go through this journey, you'll have epiphanies all the time. And that was my first real epiphany is, I'm not hungry. This is crazy, because prior to me doing full-time online coaching now, I was in the fitness industry. I was running multiple clubs. We used to have these crazy days. We'd work 8 a.m. till 10 at night on a Wednesday. And I just remember I ate my first meal at 8, and it was around 8 p.m. and I wasn't hungry. I didn't eat. I wasn't moody because, my staff used to say they liked Carnivore Joe better than, Macro Joe, because Carnivore Joe was happy all the time. Macro Joe was always miserable and angry because if I wasn't eating basically every 2-3 hours, I'd get moody, I'd get angry, and it's just my body addicted to carbs and sugar and wanting it. So yeah, that's kind of how I started. And then I started posting about, kind of the journey and starting that and all the different things that were happening. And it just kind of transpired because, people always ask me, did you plan to do this, for 9 years? And I said, hell no, I'm Italian. If you would have told me when I was starting, I wasn't going to have pasta and pizza and cannolis and gelato, I would have told you you're nuts. Right. And, 30 days basically turned into 3 months, turned into a year, and we're like 9 years later. And the way I kind of transitioned, from, for 33 years, I was doing a macro-based nutrition and coaching practice. I was not even 3 months into doing this, and my clients started doing it. I started doing it. I transitioned everything. Everything I thought about nutrition, I just threw out the window, right? And I transitioned my practice from macros to carnivore. And, like the other aspects too were just the health things, right? Like my entire adult life, I suffered with digestional issues, IBS, constipation, right? To name a few. And I did everything, fiber, probiotics, natural remedies, herbal teas, supplements, nothing works. I'm like 3 weeks into doing carnivore, eliminating, fruits, vegetables, all the healthy stuff that we're told. And, no more IBS, no more constipation, no more bloating. I'm like, you're kidding me. Like 30 plus years of my life, Groundhog Day, waking up, feeling great, having my first meal, and I'm bloated, uncomfortable all day. And it just rotated, right? So that was the first thing I noticed was, wow, like my digestive health got better. This is crazy. Within the month, my energy was through the roof, right? It's funny when you get into these rhythms, you have tunnel vision. You don't really think of, kind of really, how your life is and what's going on. You think I exercise every day, I'm eating fruits and vegetables, I'm, balancing, I'm eating in moderation, it's healthy, right? But what I realized is I was literally living on stimulants. I was living on caffeine, energy drinks, pre-workouts just to get throughout my days, right? It's funny, people, constantly being in a ketogenic lifestyle, and I'm a carnivore, like just meats and fats. You deal with, the fiber thing, the cholesterol thing, you deal with the carb thing. Like I get guys telling me all day, well, you need carbohydrates for energy. Meanwhile, they're sitting there with a triple extra large coffee and an energy drink in their workout. And I'm like, didn't you have your oatmeal this morning? I go, did you have sweet potatoes? Did you have rice? Did you have your pre-workout meal? And they're like, yep. And I go, but why don't for 30 days try to go without a stimulant if you're getting all this great energy from carbs, right? And they look at you like you're crazy, right? Because I require this. And I go, well, if your carbohydrates were such a great energy source, why do you need all these other things? And I realized that was another epiphany. I was literally living on stimulants. Couldn't get to Wednesday without double fisting energy drinks just to get throughout my days. Where, if you look at today, like I get up at 3:45 a.m. I go to bed around 11 or 12. I'm in maintenance. I eat 2 meals over 6 hours. My first meal is 1. And I function like a superhuman, right? No caffeine, no energy drinks, no pre-workouts, no stimulants. I do a double shot of decaf espresso, 1/4 cup heavy cream, 3 twists of salt. It's kind of my, little treat because all I drink is water and salt. And yeah, like just that's kind of how it all started for me. And basically it just kind of expanded. And the things too that I realized working with individuals is that, when people did macro-based diets, you're in a deficit. Did you lose a little? Sure. Did you feel a little better? Sure. But did you ever really get healthy? Did you ever really heal your body? And the answer is no, right? I could tell you over 33 years, over 12,000 individual clients, and knowing, 4 times that amount working in facilities, you never hear of people reversing ailments. You never hear of them basically getting off medications. That is literally a daily, weekly, monthly thing in these lifestyles, right? Like it's just nuts that, people start getting into a carnivore lifestyle and all of a sudden, high blood pressure disappears off of medication, high cholesterol disappears off of medication, type 2 diabetes disappears off of medication, fatty liver reversed, kidney disease reversed, anxiety, depression reversed, menopausal symptoms reversed. Like I never seen that, right? And it is just incredible how, we really don't think how food applies stress on our body and affects our body in a negative way. We like to blame everything else. We like to blame genetics. We like to blame environment. We like to blame stress, right? But the reality is what we're eating affects us the most, what we're eating, what we're drinking. And, we really have gone away from that, right? And that's kind of the thing I really took about it is we've kind of lost our way as humanity when it comes to how we should be eating and how we should be basically supporting our body through food first. And we're trying to do all these other things. And it's been a whirlwind. And like you talk about a 360, it's been a 720, right? Like it's just incredible. And the thing I realized too is there's such a need out there, right? Like if you would have told me 2 years ago, when I started doing this full time, that I'd be working 40, 50 hours a week doing nutritional coaching, I would have told you there's no way. But there's such a need out there because people are really tired of doing the same thing and getting no results. And, it's funny. I tell people all the time, listen, we're doing everything they're telling us. And, like, what did they tell us, since the 1970s? Meats, fats, salt, sun, it's all bad for you, right? And, they started telling us that, and they said, eat more often, basically more grains, more wheat. We're doing everything they're telling us, and we've never been fatter. We've never been more unhealthy. We've never been on more meds, right? And it's like, you think in, 2026, with the science we have, the technology we have, the smart people we have, we should literally be the opposite. We should be the healthiest we've ever been, right? But we're not, right? And it's because what we're told is literally the opposite of what we should be doing. And I truly believe that now, and, I'm kind of known as a thumper, the carnivore police, the carnivore Karen, because I stand on my soapbox. But, I tell people all the time, when you learn the truth, you have to deal with the consequences. And the consequences is when you realize that, everything you were trying to teach people and you're trying to work with them and you thought you were doing it right, you're not. Well, you have to make people know that, right? And that's basically kind of where I'm at now in my position, is that I think it's, the proper way humans should eat is basically meat and fat dominant. It basically supports your body the best when it comes to composition. It supports your hormonals the best when it comes to the body responding based on what you're consuming. And you literally thrive. You just don't survive. And that's basically what's happening, is people are just surviving, right? And we should be thriving, right? And we just basically take, I can remember growing up and, my mom saying, I'm Italian, so we have Italian broccoli. It's called rapini, right? And, the classic, dish, rapini, some olive oil, some garlic, and, my mom would tell you, oh, listen, you're going to eat the rapini, you're going to get a little bloated, have some gas. That's just normal, right? We normalize things that aren't normal. That's not normal. That's your body basically saying, hey, dummy, you're hurting me. Stop, right? But we basically normalize all these things, right? This is healthy. This is normal. And it's not. And that's kind of where I'm at now, is just trying to educate, inspire, empower people to understand this is not normal. And this actually is normal. And this is how we should be feeling. We should be functioning. Like, it's crazy, And it's funny, I used to watch the videos of people talking about how they feel like $1 million, how they feel like superhumans, they have this abundance of energy. And you don't really realize what that is until you actually get to this lifestyle and you actually start experiencing it, right? And it's crazy that it is regular and it is common. Within the first, 4 to 8 to 12 weeks, what happens? People recognize my energy is fantastic. I'm sleeping so much better. And my gut, right? My digestive system is so much better. And, outside of blood work, what are 3 great markers of health we usually look for? Energy, sleep, and gut. Right. And it's amazing how that is like 99% of all individuals when they're transitioning from macro-based lifestyles to basically carnivore. It kind of naturally happens. Right. And that's when, even when people are winging it, when people have no clue and they just decide, I'm going to try it. I'm just going to, dump all my carbs, start drinking some more water, eating proteins and fats. Half of those people realize within weeks, wow, this is fantastic. Right. So yeah, that's kind of me in a nutshell. I was basically just encroached in like the classic macro-based lifestyle. And now, yeah, it's funny. I, being Italian, use my hands. I talk a lot. I talk people's ears off, right? Like, don't ask me how my day is going because you'll be there for 20 minutes.
You'll
If you
hear
don't
it.
face, you're right? And and that comes through. And I tell people, when you have passion for something, it always comes through, right? I've had people tell me I convinced them in a 10-minute conversation to try the lifestyle just based on, the things I was talking about it, right? A lot of my friends say you're like an infomercial. You're basically a ketogenic carnivore infomercial. And I say, well, that's how it's affect my life so much. And I just live it, right?
So
Yeah.
why do you think this is? What do you think? I mean, the gym bros or the bodybuilding culture continues to talk about carb cycling and, loading with carbs, post workout, whatever you do, eating 6 times a day. Why do you think it continues to be like that when you're not the only one, many have found that you can do as good or better? In particular, you kind of get sick over the long run doing those things, right?
Yeah. Well,
And so you want to be healthy, you want to be strong, but you have to keep healthy for the long run, right?
First of all, it's dogmatic, right? That it's just conditioning. This is what we've been told, and this is what we believe. And it's going to take the same thing with people in our community, people in our lifestyle, to continue to basically push the way and the path and educate people. Because, I have tons of athletes that, we're taught. I was an athlete, played football, and, we taught basically carb loading. We know now carb loading doesn't work, right? It's very ineffective. Actually, fat loading works fantastic. I have athletes that fat load. And it's just, like it takes a while. And it's just because they're, I hate using the word brainwashed, but it is just conditioning. It's dogmatic that, if you tell someone something a million times, they believe it. And that's basically what's happening. We were told these things a million times, so we ended up believing it. And the thing is, we got to use practical applications. I tell everyone that doubts me, I'm like, do it for 30 days, do it properly. Trust me, you'll never go back. And that's usually what happens, right? And unfortunately, the perception of a bodybuilder lifestyle, people see the magazines, that's healthy. They don't realize that's not healthy, right? And coaches who are real coaches and competitors who are real competitors, they'll tell you it's the most unhealthy thing you can do is manipulate your body like that. And it's not for life, and it's not for optimal wellness. It's for a stage, it's for a show. But people have that perception that's healthy, so that's what they're kind of going after. But it's amazing and I call them my macro brothers and sisters, and they call them arguments. I call them discussions. They're amazed when they're like, what do you mean you don't have a pre-workout meal? What do you mean you don't have a post-pre-workout meal, right? And I'm like, well, you don't require them. I go, like some of the biggest fallacies out there are, by the food companies and by the supplement companies, like, do you need 30 grams of protein right after you work out or else you're not going to have gains? That's what they tell you. Well, that's fallacy. That's a falsehood. That's a lie. As long as you're getting enough protein within a 24-hour to 48-hour period of your body recovering, guess what? You're getting the exact same thing. Individuals on our lifestyle do exceptionally well, especially if you work out. You can always tell people who work out and do carnivore because they're usually very lean, they're very muscular. And the reason being they look even better now is because they're getting an efficient and effective amount of protein, where before it was always inefficient, right? If you take the average person who's only eating 30% of their intake from protein, that's nothing, right? When you go to our lifestyle, you're getting 100% of your intake from protein. So you're already at not an inefficient amount, you're at an efficient amount, right? And, for people who work out that get into this lifestyle, it's incredible. They end up all working out fasted and basically. Joe. Yes, sir. Sorry. Go ahead.
People don't eat macros. You either eat plants or animals.
Yes. Okay.
And so it's part of the brainwashing.
Yeah.
because you eat cells of organisms. And so part of this, because even like protein powders, those are processed products that aren't natural to nature anyway. And a protein-centric diet is protein poisoning. And I'm just wondering if that's part of the, again, the story, the mantras of you need protein, but you said it, fat. So in actuality, the carnivore diet.
What do you think about the fat loading he mentioned, Dr. Kiltz?
Well, because adipose tissue is what we are meant to eat, not lean meat anyway. Again, if you're 300 pounds and you don't eat for a month or 3 months and you work out, you will build muscle. So I maybe even in the world of bodybuilding, we don't even need to work out technically. You just need to move.
Yeah, physical movement, absolutely.
And I'm just curious on what your thoughts are that, in fact, going to the gym isn't even required to be healthy.
Oh, it's not. And it's funny. I have videos on that and people lose their mind, right? Because the thought process is, because the fitness and nutrition industry has lied for decades, it's 50-50. If you want to lose weight, you have to exercise. You have to basically eat better. And the ironic thing is, when you get educated and you learn about your TDEE, your total daily energy expenditure, when you're in a macro-based lifestyle and you want to be in that deficit, ironically enough, your exercise component, it's EAT, exercise activity thermogenic, is only responsible for 5%. If you want a definition of insanity, work out to lose weight. We know it doesn't work, but people think it does. And I tell people this all the time. You do not do physical activity, whether it's a workout, to basically lose weight. You do it to keep your body strong. But you can do that by walking. You can do that by gardening, right? The perception is you have to work out and you don't. I tell people all the time, because I get people messaging me, I'm not able to work out yet, so I'm not going to start carnivore until I work out. And I'm like, well, working out is not a requirement. I go, you breathing is a requirement, right? I have clients that are bedridden, right? In wheelchairs, in bed, they don't move. And guess what? They're losing weight because it's nutrition. You have to prioritize that. I tell people all the time, 70% of my carnivore clients do not work out, don't even get their steps in, which I promote because I want them to basically have a healthy heart. And 30% go to the gym. My 70% that aren't going to the gym are getting better body compositional results than the ones going to the gym, right?
So we have a question from Dr. Kiltz. Joe, is carnivore for all humans?
1,000%. I haven't met an individual that hasn't thrived in the lifestyle. I've met individuals that had problems transitioning, and that's because their body had issues, because digestively they're broken, hormonally, metabolically they're broken. But I've never met a person that hasn't thrived in the lifestyle, and it doesn't work for. And that's because, what's really funny? If you take a nutrition course, Nutrition 101, what is the first things they teach you? Macronutrients. Carbs are non-essential. Proteins and fats are essential. And it is crazy how many people tell you need carbohydrates. You don't require proteins and fats. And I go, these aren't, with science, we have what we call scientific absolutes. And then we have conjecture, like theory. I go, these aren't theory. These are scientific absolutes. A carbohydrate's a non-essential macronutrient. Your body doesn't require a gram.
Well, I'm going to differ with that comment. Okay. The glycocalyx is the sugar layer that actually is the most important layer of every cell of the human body. So what we're saying is plants are not required for the human diet, but sugars are actually in every bite of meat you eat, every bite of plants you eat, but plants come with poisons where meat does not. And so when we use the word carbohydrate, we're talking about sugars, right?
Technically, yes.
And sugars form the glycocalyx. Without a glycocalyx, which is actually probably the biggest cause of disease, we're dead. And so the sugars, there are 9 of them in the human body. Without them, we're dead. But that's the part when we use the word carbohydrate, what we're really saying is plants. Wouldn't you agree?
Well, yeah, and I absolutely, and that's actually a great way to explain it. The thing is, when people think of carbohydrates, they don't think that way, right? So that's why I kind of just preferences that because, but yeah, absolutely, 1000%.
We're scientists that need to be, because small amounts of plant sugars are not your problem. It's a low-fat diet that actually is the biggest problem.
Oh, absolutely.
And 3 to 6 meals a day, because in truth, we are omnivores, and you can thrive on an omnivorous diet, but it requires a high animal fat diet and eating less frequently. That is the biggest probable problem for the people of the planet, which is we're eating a low animal fat diet and we're eating all sorts of raw plants, but plants in general raw are harmful and meats in general cooked are harmful, which is kind of radical, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
But you're right, carnivore. So, I mean, what do you mean by what carnivore? What is a carnivore diet?
A carnivore diet to me is, well, I think where we get mixed up is carnivore ketogenic, right? And there's a lot of people believe if you're eating a meat dominant diet, it's carnivore, right? And I believe a carnivore diet, when we classify just carnivore, not animal-based, not keto, a carnivore diet is 98% of what you're eating is meats and fats from an animal. Right? Like I did a video the other day and people lost their stuff because I said technically dairy is not carnivore, right? Because if you look at dairy, it's nor a meat or a fat, right? It's allowable, in limited amounts. And once you go to animal-based or keto, you can do a lot more. But, and it was referenced to someone asking me about, can this affect me in a negative way because I'm having certain responses? And I'm like, absolutely, right? Because I've noticed, I keep a lot of notes. I keep track of things, and I've worked with to date 1,121 carnivore clients over the 8.5 years, and one of the biggest things I realized is based on consumption of dairy, right? Whether it's ripened dairy, unripened dairy, how I've had so many clients in the hundreds when they're consuming unripened dairy, cravings, appetite, basically hunger is always an issue, right? When they eliminate it or reduce it, it goes down, right? And then some people stall out, and as soon as we eliminate dairy, they progress a little better, right?
No other animal tries to be skinny. It's like dumb.
Yeah.
It's like the biggest, dumbest thing. And this is our problem. You try to do the thing and your body's like, are you dumb? Like there's a famine coming. It's coming. Look at the world that we live in.
Oh,
and
absolutely.
Skinny is deadly. But you're right. Milk is for babies. I mean, isn't that one of our biggest problems?
It is, if we look at, what transpires the first year, the reason why the baby feeds baby animal and milk and the casomorphines is to increase their appetite to get them hungry so they fatten up. Well, guess what? We get those same responses as humans, right? And the reality is, the only time we really need milk when we're babies is that first year when we're born. Outside of that, we really don't need it.
Well, my bet is, you're probably breastfeeding for 2 to 3 years in most evolution, but you're right. It is our biggest problem. What has been the biggest hurdle you think for most of your clients in transitioning from a scandivore to a carnivore?
Really, actually, the biggest hurdle for people is worrying about what other people think, right? That's the number one hurdle. I tell people, people always ask me, what are your top 5 tips? And I go, well, my number 1 tip is when you want to do this, don't literally give 2 iotas what other people think of you doing it, right? because if you're worrying more about them and not about you, you're going to have issues going through it because you're going to be defensive, right? I tell people, when you do, because I prefer people doing 90 days. I think 90 days is perfect because a lot of people do 30 and they don't see or feel, what they need to. I tell them, I go, in 90 days, you're going to go through 3 transitions. I go, you're going to basically hide it, right? You're going to not talk about it because it's very dogmatic that it's bad for you. And you're going to have a lot of judgment because forget about armchair quarterbacks. You have armchair fitness experts everywhere. You're the receptionist, the dentist, your mechanic, you're the clerk at the grocery store. They're all going to tell you what to eat and how to do it. And you shouldn't be doing it. I said, so you go through that first transition where you kind of hide it. And then what happens? You're 4-6 weeks in, you're feeling like $1 million, great things are happening, and then you start talking about it and you get defensive. And then you're 8 to 12 weeks in, you lost some weight, you got a little leaner, you have lines in your body and you don't even work out that you've never had before. Your sleep's incredible. Your mood is fantastic. Your skin looks better. You just ran into someone who hasn't seen you in 8 weeks and they're like, wow, you look fantastic. And they're not talking about basically your weight loss. They're just talking about how you're glowing, your aura, your skin, and then you become an advocate, you become passionate, and then you basically talk people's ears off, right? Like 18% of my clients are referrals from other people who basically they're talking to their friend and they wouldn't talk their ear off. They got them so motivated, they wanted to do it, right? So yeah, that for me, that's the number one thing is basically just kind of freeing your mind. Don't worry about other people. Just do you for 90 days and see where it goes. And then the next one, the biggest hurdle is people's mindset of fat is bad for you, right? I tell people the key in this lifestyle is fat. It's actually not protein, right? So you really got to get over the fact that you're going to consume a lot of fat. And guess what? You're going to feel like $1 million. And if you have health issues, it's going to heal you. And, if you have so that's kind of the hardest part. People have a real hard time just because, it's been inbred, low fat, low fat, low fat, low fat. And believe it or not, the third thing, which is crazy, is the simplicity, right? People, when they think they go on a diet or they have to have something structured, it's going to be hard, it's going to be brutal, I'm not going to be happy. When we kind of go through it and they go through it, they're like, okay, what else? And I'm like, no, that's kind of it. And they're like, what do you mean? And they're like, and it's a hard time getting over that. And I said, listen, the lifestyle is actually pretty simplistic when you think of, it's basically, hydration, and it's basically supporting your body through consumption. So, I always break it down: water, salt, protein, fat. I go, it's just balancing out those.
What does fatty mean? When we break down, because again, protein, when we use the word protein, you're talking about animal meat. Is that right? Right. So, and we're talking about fat, you're talking about the white stuff on the animal, basically. Because people hear the word fat and they think, oh, an avocado or cashew.
Yeah. Well, yeah. My reference 100% is always based on meats and fats, the animal, never fruits and vegetables.
Fatty animal meat.
Yes.
Which because no animal eats protein. They eat, and when we use the word carbs, I'm just trying to get to the simplistic science, which is you either eat animals or plants, and some people eat fungus, which is highly deadly in the world, right?
Well, and and this is great. So it's dogmatic to me. I should actually start looking at it that way, and I'm going to, because I'll say carbs, I'll say protein, I'll say fat, right? And that's because that's the way I've been taught to look at it, and that's the way everyone looks at it. So we should look at it at different ways. But absolutely,
right? Because I hear. Okay, go ahead. Sorry, Joe.
Yeah, and you're right. It's fatty meat, right? And it's like I get crapped on because I'll see someone in Carnivore doing chicken breasts, and I'm like, we don't do chicken breasts. It's not a fatty meat, right? And if you do it, you got to add your fats, right? And people are all over me, right?
But is butter really a healthy fat?
In all honesty, my opinion, no.
Is the raw fat of the animal the healthy fat?
Absolutely.
And so once we render it, I mean, butter is essentially somewhat, most of it's pasteurized, so it's rendered in some way. Might it be actually not as healthy for us because no other animal eats butter or milk throughout their lifetime, even cheeses, right? Maybe you could answer your thoughts on cheese.
Well, let's talk about butter for a quick sec. I literally did a video why carnivores are ditching butter yesterday. And the reality is there's too many influencers and there's too many, social media carnivores that, they get the fat thing, but they're like, eat your butter, eat your butter, eat your butter, eat your butter. And, I actually limit my clients in eating butter. I'm like, I don't want you having more than a stick a day. If you want to get your fats, it's through the meats, or I want you to eat basically lard. I want you to eat tallow. I want you to eat bacon fat. I want you to eat duck fat, right? From the actual animal, right? And the reason why so many people are ditching butter is because people are now getting negative responses to butter, right? Because they're over consuming it, and it's really not the preferred fat we should be getting. It's just an easy fat and it's tasty for some people, right? But, it's like transitions.
I tell people raw butter. If you're going to eat butter, make it raw, unpasteurized. Although, okay, you got to define the source, XYZ, I'm not saying what to do. But because it's the raw butter, the raw milk, the raw cream, because pasteurized damages it and homogenization damages it.
Well,
and
that's absolutely. And that's my whole theory when I talk about, if you are going to utilize dairy in a carnivore lifestyle, it has to be ripened because it's the closest thing to natural, and raw is always better. You still have to limit it, right? As soon as you go unripened and pasteurized, they're taking all the good stuff out of it, right? And that's why, cottage cheese, cream cheese, like those things aren't carnivore to me, right? Those things are more keto.
We have a question. Let's take some questions because 40 plus minutes. Chuck has a question. Besides switching to carnivore, do you coach your clients to drink water the way we were taught before, half your body weight in ounces, or do you coach them to do something different, like drink when you're thirsty, don't drink if you're not thirsty?
Well, no, I don't, I differ on the opinion of some people. To me, if you wait to drink until you're thirsty, it just means you haven't drank enough and your body's asking you for something. I like the aspect of eating based on requirement, drinking based on requirement. Because when you eat based on requirement, when you drink based on requirement, what happens, your body never asks you for anything, right? You function at a really great rate. And obviously, there's no such thing as perfection, it's consistency, and there'll be always differences based on expenditure. Like, if you sit at home at a desk all day, like I do, 6 to 12 hours a day, basically doing, coaching, but then if I went outside and I, built a deck, in 90 degrees for 8 hours, there's going to be a difference, right? My body's going to ask me for more. I do, I look at basically thresholds when it comes to drinking. Like I look at a person's body weight. I try to intake their activity levels, and then I will give them a baseline of kind of where they should be, if they're, American ounces, if they're Europe Canadian, I'll do it in liters. But yeah, I do go over with my clients, I do go over water consumption, go over salt consumption. Because I have found over the years, basically, that, when people are hydrated, they function and they do better, right? So absolutely, I do.
Question from Carnivore now. Hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Joe, what is your opinion on creatine and how many grams should we be taking a day?
Well, in all honesty, if you're carnivoring properly, you get in 20 ounces of basically a ruminant meat, you get around 3 or 4 grams, right? So we get creatine naturally. I'm not opposed to it if people want to take it. My clients take no supplements. I don't take any supplements. We get everything we need through meats and fats. Transitioning, if a person has some deficiencies, you can utilize some supplements to transition, but my goal is to get a person to their health is good enough that basically their body just lives off meats and fats and they thrive. And I've been able to do that. If a person wants to take creatine, the classic 10 grams a day, but once again, I'm not big on supplements anymore. And, ironically enough, in my prior life as a macro-based coach, I have 36 certs, nutrition, exercise, supplementations, blood work. And I used to, as a macro-based coach, I used to have a service, $279. You send me your blood work. I assess your blood work based on your panels and your blood work. I tell you what supplements to take. It's funny how I don't have to do that with carnivore, right? People carnivoring properly and you're consistent, your body balances out, right? And you basically, you don't require anything. It's usually, he's probably a workout guy and, he wants to take his supplements because they're all, I was like that. I used to, 40 supplements a day, and that's, we talk about epiphanies, I love the fact that I'm never going to eat a bowl of rice, broccoli, and chicken breast ever again in my life. I love the fact that I'm not supplementing through the roof every day. I love the fact I'm not doing protein shakes every day, right?
Hyper supplementation can be as bad as polypharmacy prescriptions from your doctor. You take too many of them together, they can both have adverse effects and
absolutely. And most supplements are crap. The bioavailability's crap. The absorption rates are crap. It's a $1 billion industry based on fear mongering. You're not getting nutrients, you have to take it, right? When I was a macro-based coach, I said, unless you have a deficiency, we're not taking it, right? Why are you going to take something if you don't have a deficiency, right? If your body is very efficient in something and you overtake it, is there a benefit to that? No. And why spend the money?
Dave on the record asks, how many meals do you eat a day? I've been strict carnivore 6 months, work out, etc., and gained 15 pounds. Am I eating too much at 3 meals a day most days, even though carnivore? Looked leaner before.
Well, if you look leaner before and you're bigger now, we would obviously say you're eating too much, obviously, if you're gaining weight, right? That's a pretty open-ended question, and I would always say I need a lot more info. Like, people always ask me, hey, coach, how many times you eat? And I'm like, well, I know why you're asking me that, because you want to do the same thing I'm doing, but I eat based for me, right? Like, I'm in maintenance. When I started my carnivore journey, and I've been very transparent with it. I was going through a bad separation, bad divorce. I was eating my sadness, anger, and all my feelings through ice cream, pizza, and pasta. And I literally, in 3.5 months, went from 208 pounds to 244 pounds, right? And then I did carnivore and I basically lost 64 pounds of fat. I gained 12 pounds of muscle. I leaned out. And I basically, for my first 3 years of carnivore, I was eating 3 meals over 9 hours, right? And it felt good, felt great. There was a couple times I tried to go down to 2, but I noticed my energy wasn't as good, my mood wasn't as good, my sleep wasn't good, my digestional health wasn't good. So I went back to 3, and I noticed I was functioning at that rate. I eventually went down to 2, and then I figured out the reason why I wasn't doing as well with the 2 is because I still wasn't eating enough my body required within that 2. So I just kind of modified it. And then so I'm at 2 over 6 hours right now. So I basically eat in a 6-hour window, and then I'm basically in a fasted state for 18. So that's what I do. The majority of my clients, we start at 3 over an 8 to 10 hour window, and I like them being in a fasted window, at least 14 to 16 hours. I like them to, get into, the body thrives with consistency. It really doesn't like inconsistency, right? And I do believe there's stages, right? People will get to certain stages. You can get to the point where you can eat based on hunger, but a lot of people have to get to that stage, right? It's one of the things, like I have, because there's nothing that's kind of finite, right? Like, with macro-based, I'll be honest, I tell people all the time, I made a lot more money in macro-based coaching because it was just plug and play, because it was based on calories, right? Calories literally mean nothing, right? Like people ask me all the time, how do how many calories I should be eating? I go, I have no clue. I've done over 1,100 carnivore nutrition plans. I haven't counted a calorie yet, right? I can do it after the fact because numbers are numbers, right? If I know how much protein you're eating, how much fat you're eating, I can just times by 9, times by 4, right? But like, it means nothing. Like, I have people tell me, oh, you guys are only losing weight in carnivore because you're in a deficit. And I go, that's funny, because when I do the numbers, 90% of my clients, if you look at the calorie number, they're in a surplus of calories, but they're not in a surplus of energy from fat. And that's why
when someone tells me that argument, I always bring this example. Oreo cookies are about 53 calories, eggs about 70 to 75 calories per egg. Therefore, Oreo cookies are healthier, right?
Yeah. Well, and that's the problem. The perception of healthy is low calories, low fat, right?
Yeah.
And that's what media's done. That's what the food companies have done. That's what the pharmaceutical companies have done. They've convinced people low calories, low fat is healthy.
But no
right?
other animal works to be skinny. Our work to be skinny is unnatural.
Absolutely.
Because the availability of food in our ancient environment was much harder. And so we made up a complex story, but it basically seasonally, you got fat, you got skinny. Environmentally, migration, hibernation, all the things that all our animals deal with, and hunting and killing an animal to eat it ain't easy. And so again, it's a complicated story. It's really simple. Love the body you're in, eat fatty meat, and go to work every day.
Well, I love you just said that. Love the body you're in, because that's one of the biggest issues too, is people's perception of loving their body as a certain look. They're thinking of abs, right? And the reality is everyone in their carnivore journey is going to have a different body. Some people might have abs, some people might not, right? That's not the way it kind of works.
Well, everyone has abs.
Well, no. I understand.
But meaning that the muscle structure of an obese person is stronger than a skinny person, because they're carrying more weight, and the strength that they have may be stronger. So it's the only thing that really changes is the coat we wear, the fat coat.
Well, yeah, and I love you even said that, because I don't have any skinny fat carnivore clients. I've had plenty of skinny fat macro based clients.
Oh, yeah.
Right. And the reference to skinny fat is you're skinny, but you have no muscle, right? And that's inherently what happens in macro based diets, is people end up burning basically a little bit of fat, they end up burning muscle, and they lose a little bit of water, right? In our lifestyle, we never really burn muscle. If anything, we gain it, right? And, and I love the water thing, right? Oh, you guys are just losing water. And I'm like, well, no shit, Sherlock, but guess what? Every nutrition plan you do where you reduce carbohydrates, you're going to drop water. We just drop the most amount of water in the shortest period of time because we limit the most amount of carbohydrates, right? So that's not a big deal, right? But
your weight doesn't matter.
Yeah. And it doesn't. We use that as a tool and a measurement. And the reality is this: your body was never designed to hold excess fat. And that's why we'll burn it and we'll get a little leaner. But that looks different for everybody, right? People are so focused on body fat percentage, they're so focused on numbers. And, I always tell people, listen, your goal is basically to transition, to get healthy, let your body naturally get when it goes to, but it's very rare you're going to be sitting with 20, 30, 40, 50 pounds of excess body fat when you're basically living a proper carnivore lifestyle. That's just not normal.
Brisket Boomers ask, what do you use when you do fat loading?
I use fat, like basically literally fat. Like I had the opportunity once from the farmer I get my cows from to watch them kind of cut the cow, right? And there's this massive layer of fat in like 4 inches, and they usually leave an inch, and they just cut the 3 and threw it out. And I'm like, what are you doing? Like, what do you mean? And I'm like, what are you doing with all that fat? And they're like, oh, we no one ever wants it. And I go, no. I go, listen, what I want you to do is I want you to cut it. I want them to look like fish sticks. And they're like, what? I want it 1 inch wide, 3 inches long, and around 1/2 inch thick. And they'll cut me up like 100 of those. And I literally fry them up in bacon fat. They get super crispy on the outside. They're juicy on the inside, and I eat it. So that's in essence what fat loading is. So I have some clients that are professional athletes, right? Triathletes, and they'll fat load. They'll basically eat like, 1 pound of fat an hour prior to their competition. And it just gives them a little more energy. But it's amazing how I have athletes training and they're fat adapted. Like my one triathlete, Dawn, she's like, it's crazy. She goes, I'm on a bike just passing all the guys squeezing their sugar gel packs because they're going up and down. And she goes, and I'm just going straight through, right? Because she's using fat for energy, and fat's more efficient and effective energy. Fat loading is literally just taking actual animal fat and consuming a certain amount of it prior to an event, right? And that's really what it is. And you can break it down into amounts based on person and then length, but that is essentially what it is. So you're taking, my clients love duck skin. They love chicken skin just because it's crispy, it's easy. They can make it, salt it up. The beef fat's phenomenal. Lamb fat's some of my favorite fat. If I could get that in buckets, I would friggin' get it in buckets. But yeah, that's the premise on fat loading, is just a little extra fat.
Fat's critical. You're skinny, you're dead in a famine. Fat is only fuel for the cell. We do not burn sugars or proteins. We burn only fat. That's the magic of the human body.
Oh, it's incredible when you utilize fat for energy, right? It's crazy. And I tell people, like, I'm a workout guy, and it's because it's part of my lifestyle, right? I started working out when I was 14 years old because I was 308 pounds, and I didn't want to go into high school not having a girlfriend, right? And I've always done that. But I can tell you, living in this lifestyle, being fat adapted, my workouts have never been better. My energy's never been better. My stamina's never been better. Don't have any issues, right? And, it was never like that trying to utilize carbohydrates, right? Same thing, pre-workouts, caffeine, right? If I didn't have them, I couldn't get through or have a great workout. So, and yeah.
Plenty of fat people have boyfriends and girlfriends, by the way.
Yeah, and I get it.
It's just your mindset. But as an adolescent, but that's our part. I'm in medicine, and I tell people, I never tell people to lose weight ever.
Yeah.
Ever. Because their obesity is not their pathology. The deadly diet they eat is.
Yeah.
And that's what we're working towards. So.
Yeah. Well, even like I tell, I've been doing this for a long time, and I was that. And like, when you have people that are excessively overweight, 100, 200, 300 pounds, it's not the food. The food is just the causality. It's, they're usually dealing with something, and they're using food as their dependency. And I was that guy too, right? I've been very transparent with my story, and being, having food dependencies, eating disorders. And, a lot of people do not utilize, drugs and alcohol as their dependency. They utilize food. And that's another thing is, we lost our way with nutrition. And, I love people say sugar's not the problem. Ingredients aren't the problem. Food's not the problem. You're the problem. And I'm like, no,
Joe.
Yeah.
Let me do this. Wellness with Love. Email alia@drkiltz.com and tell us your TikTok on how to find you, because we're gonna end about
sweet. We got
20 seconds.
10 seconds.
Okay, no problem.
What's your TikTok?
Oh, my TikTok's Coach Carnivore Joe.
All right.
All right. Everybody have a good day.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
See you tomorrow.
Love you, Joe. Bye. Hold on, Joe.
Bye-bye.
Hold on, Joe.